in quite a short time, I think we have shown, first of all, that this is a network that is useful and beneficial. It has been linking with the benefits of social media and better communications. It's very easy to communicate in a way that in the past would have been something that intellectuals and academics would have dreamt of. So we got started, and of course we now all know each other from our emails and other methods of communicating. But we also have started having at least one conference a year. Dinesh and I were discussing that we really need two, but we'll see how it goes this time. Last year, we had, to be generous, half this number kept coming. 25, I would have thought, last year in Hungary, in Budapest. But this year, 55 people have indicated they're coming. Two or three are still on their way. So, welcome everyone. You are a very precious commodity. In absentia, I was nominated and elected chair of this organisation. And I find that quite embarrassing because I'm not a researcher. I'm a member of Parliament who all my parliamentary life has been obsessed with road safety. And my very first private member's bill banned children from being carried without restraint in cars. And then I organised with a group of people who are the researchers in the United Kingdom. We put a coalition together and we managed to get the seatbelt legislation, compulsory adult seatbelts. And because that group was so successful, we said we should not abandon it. Once we achieved our first objectives, and we said we must start again to have a campaign, keep together. There are many other things that we can achieve together. So we did, and that became PACT, the Parliamentary Advisory Council on Transport Safety, PACT. Delighted David Davis, the Chief Executive, is sitting right there. Yes. And then after a few years, much of the regulation was moving to Europe, and so we, with the Dutch in those days, the Swedes, and the Germans, and a couple of others, but I can't remember who the instigators were, but a small group of us, we started ETSC, the European Transport Safety Council, which, as you know, and I don't think they're here yet, are they, ETSC? Oh, they are! He's hiding over there. Good morning, Antonio, lovely to see you. So we set up a ETSC, and again, quite an important organisation for road safety. And some of us, we played around with the World Bank and Global Road Safety Partnership at one time. I became the chair of that for 2 years. It rather got taken over, I have to say, by the auto industry. And it's still going. I don't have anything to do with it now. And then just about 9 months ago, a new group, legislators for road safety backed by the United Nations and World Health Organization, have started this new group, legislators for road safety. And again, you get to the age where you chair things. I now chair global legislators for road safety. So, as you can see, people come up to me sometimes and say, Barry, do you do anything but road safety? I do have other interests, and so it was 10 years I've just finished chairing the Parliamentary Education Committee, so I do other stuff. But like you, I am obsessed with this challenge that we face. One point, I think I've got to be very cautious after dinner last night. Anything you say, suddenly someone said, how far have you checked those facts, Barry? The last time I talked to one of you, it was 1.25 million people dying on the roads globally every year. 1.25 million. And you can multiply that by 10, the researchers tell me, for serious accidents. And I once asked, I think it was Matthew, I asked, what does a serious accident really mean? And he said to me, you never walk again without pain. So we have a tremendous challenge in front of us, 1.25 million. And I found it very difficult when I was in China. One of my first visits wearing my new responsibility was in China, and I found it quite difficult in some of the big audience to know that my message was going over about how important that we focused on reducing the appalling number of road accidents and road deaths in China. And about the third big meeting I addressed, I said, surely it must be wrong that in this country of yours, there will be 100,000, I can't remember the exact number, but it was a very large number, knocks on the door. Knocks on the door where a policeman, policewoman knocks on your door and says, your daughter's dead, your son's dead, your mum, your dad, your uncle, your aunt. Surely that is wrong. And using that knock on the door, by the time I got to the other meetings, I suddenly saw people sitting up in their chair and thinking, yes, the message got home. So I have a hashtag sometimes that I use in the UK, stop the knock, which is for my 12,000 followers from last weekend on Twitter. Stop the knock is becoming quite familiar to them. However, enough of me rambling on about what brings us all together. What brings us all together is we know that these are avoidable accidents. They're avoidable deaths. And from the very beginning, when I started getting involved in transport safety, I was convinced by you guys that the only way forward was good evidence, good research-based conclusions that we can then give to legislators like me in order to get the right kind of modifications to legislation and regulation. So that's enough from me. Let's go on. Could you put your hands up if you didn't come to the last conference in Budapest? Wow, welcome indeed. Now, we're not going to do the ponderous thing of everyone introducing themselves, but as you ask questions, will you say, I'm from whatever, and this is my background. Okay? Good. First paper?
I think we can start.
Should we go straight into papers?
Straight into the first paper.
Before you do, what we said in Budapest was this is not going to be a talking at session. Yeah? We don't believe in that. It's got to be about conversations, it's got to be, it's got to be a bit disruptive. So, any questions about what I've said, for example? Why we're here, what the purpose is? Come on, let's have one or two questions before we move on. Show that we are a rather awkward bunch of people. Come on. I'm looking at the women particularly. They're well known to be disruptors and innovative thinkers. Can't teach a question from Sweden? Okay, but look, come on. The theme is, we know why we're here, but we really have to be not so well behaved. Please, I want you to be disruptive. I want you to be, say I don't agree with that. My friend over here is going to be leading disruption. Are you not?
Yes.
We will
Thank
try.
Good.
Try.
You're going to try. Okay.
You, yes.
But this, because it's bigger this year, you're going to be a little bit less forthcoming, I think. So, Dinesh, over to you.
I thought I'll just add to what Barry said, that we discussed getting together for about 2 years before we formally got a name, and we got the name because it just sounds nice. So then we had to put words to it, and so council and international, etc., etc. But the main reason we are here is because each one of you, and we are really grateful that you made the effort to come on this cold, wintry, snowy day, is because many of us feel, and I think most of you do too, that there's not enough work. Everyone thinks we know the solutions and they just have to be implemented. We have a slightly different feel that, of course, some solutions are known, and of course, something works everywhere in the world. Seatbelts work no matter where you are. Some medicines work no matter where you are. Helmets work no matter where you are. But still, we have a problem in the sense on how do you get things going. And it's not just developing countries. The US has not been able to pass a law for helmets in all its states. Europe has not been able to do anything about bicycle helmets. And if you believe in evidence-based medicine, it's possible that to say that if all pedestrians wore helmets, we would reduce pedestrian deaths.
Exactly.
So the issue is not just technology and science. Issue is that once you know number one, as you'll find out in our discussions, because some of us spent last 6 months preparing some of the papers, and among us we had problems agreeing on every word of each paper. And so which means that it's a very, very weak science. It's not a strong science at all. And we've discovered things by doing, mostly, which is not good enough. And even our crashworthiness regulations, for example, 30 miles an hour or 55 kilometers an hour impact was done when I was doing my PhD, and I know for a fact it was not based on science. It was done because we just knew something, and that's what the manufacturers could do, and the standard was established. And once the standard got established, it stays up to today. And so many of the standards, for example, chest deflection standard, 3 groups, one from Michigan, one from University of Michigan, one from Detroit, another somewhere else. We went and said it's 2.5 inches, and it got done because some ribs broke at 2.5 inches. So there is a problem of not enough science, and it's partly because no university in the world that I know of gives it importance. And so it's not easy to pursue an academic career in this field for your life, like biologists can do or physicists can do and so on. And none of the big agencies which are promoting road safety today are funding anything to discover knowledge. And so there's a serious problem as we discuss, and that's why all of us are here together, because we need each one of us to help each other, because we need evidence from different fields, completely different fields to help each other, and we need evidence from different parts of the world. Because a lot of things depend not because you're this group or that group, but because your forms of travel are different. In some countries, 90% of the people are on motorcycles. In some countries, 90% of people are in cars. So how all that interacts also becomes difficult. So I think this is a journey which I think is starting today, in the sense that this is our first major attempt at bringing people like you together who are the best in the field in the world. And then how do we continue this collaboration and to somehow nudge organizations to help in production of knowledge. Because I've had personal experience with big funders coming to me and say, we won't fund any research because we know what to do. You implement it and you reduce deaths by 10% in your country in 2 years. I've worked in my country now for 40 years and I've not reduced anything. So the issue is that we have to know more. And how do we know more is through this kind of honest, heartfelt discussion. Because I think something has to be here for it to fix something here, and not the other way around. And I think that's how we're going to go. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you. Just one thing that I didn't say, and both of us, we realise this group has got to be more diverse. We've got to get a lot of younger researchers involved. One of the things, the ambitions, is actually to find out, is there enough opportunity for young researchers to get into the field and to get funded to continue their work? Are there centres of excellence around the world that we know less about or we can encourage? And so that is our ambition too. So the next time we have one of these, we want to see a different age range, perhaps more women and more diversity. So we have some ambitions like that. There's one, I think, very different mode from last year to this year. We do have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, which I think is fundamentally important. the United Nations and other organisations are waking up to the disaster that this level of death and serious injury is. And so there's a kind of background mood music where we could make great changes. But, you know, and I think Dinesh and I agree, we don't want to go rushing up kind of some hearts and flowers, you know, sounds good, you know, a kind of a direction. We want it to be based on good evidence, good research, and what works in countries like ours. So we're very optimistic, aren't we?
Otherwise, we won't be here.
Yes, we are very optimistic. So it is, you know, very much beginning.